Solvitur Ambulando, The Adventures of Steve and Dixie by Stephen Breakstone. Copyright 2025. Snippets from my journal. Episode 29. Month number 10, March 1987. March 16th, 1987, Monday. I haven't journaled for a while because Mom came to visit. It was great having her here. As she has given me a great life, I, in turn, have done my best to return that favor in any way I can. Mom was never much of a traveler and has not seen much of her country. She has been to upstate New York, of course, and New York's Floridian suburbs in Orlando, West Palm Beach, and Miami on a vacation. But she's only been as far west as her trip to visit me in New Orleans. That's not very far west. Mom does not like airplanes. She took one on her honeymoon in 1956 and didn't like it. So she takes trains and loves it. And now she has had the chance to see what the Midwest looks like. I haven't seen Mom in about a year, and I was surprised that after about 5 seconds, it was hard to believe that it had been that long. I give credit to a great relationship and to Ma Bell. Side note, Ma Bell was the nickname of the landline telephone service for those who don't remember that there used to only be one phone company, although in the 1980s the US government began to break up the monopoly. Just because we have not seen each other doesn't mean we haven't been together. I do not miss being with her physical presence because our relationship is as strong as ever, even if it's mostly through phone calls and letters. I have been looking at maps the last few weeks, and I rented a car, with her credit card, for Dixie, Mom, and I to head west. I showed her where I worked on the Brady farm and then drove on toward Colorado. I purposely went on small country roads I knew I wouldn't be traveling on foot later on. I wanted those roads to be as new to me when Dixie and I head out again as all the roads have been since walking out of the French Quarter. Mom has a different point of view from me and my love of the rural. She did not see vast open space as beauty. She saw it as a place where overpopulated New York should send many of its too many people. All this land being wasted, why don't they come out here? She wondered. Well, I think there are a lot of people who would strongly argue with that point, for one, I said. And two, all those people have the opportunity to leave New York anytime they want. She does have half a point. Why people prefer to live on top of each other instead of having elbow space is a sociological phenomenon to me. She did spend the first 37 years of her life in the Bronx, but since 1972 has lived in the suburbs, and I don't think she ever missed living in the city. From my point of view, I'm glad all those millions of people all live in New York City. I'd rather see wide open spaces than see lots of houses and buildings, streets, stores, and pollution. I say keep the humans in one place and let the rest of nature rest easy in her own balance. Side note, it's almost 40 years later, and the USA has gained about 100 million people. As I continue to travel over the years, especially on cross-country driving trips, which I love, I have been dismayed at the ugly urban sprawl in such wonderful and wondrous places from Texas to Oregon to Montana to, well, pretty much all over America. I did love impressing Mom when we went over a rise on the road, and looking ahead, I knew the Rockies would do their magic. She was finally awed. Mom is just as human as the rest of us, I'm happy to say. The sight of the snow-capped peaks of the Rockies is another place where you have to be comatose to not be affected. And while driving in the mountains, I loved having her think we were lost. We were in a car on normal roads, but we had to go very slowly. She's not used to 10,000 to 12,000 feet above sea level and switchbacks up and down a mountain. We headed down to Santa Fe and Albuquerque, New Mexico. I got a real kick when I finally had Mom understand Dixie's charm. For almost a year, I've been talking about my beautiful dog, and she has received letters from new friends about her son and his great and beautiful dog. To Mom, a dog is a dog. She appreciated Benson, but let's not get carried away. Well, in every tourist stop we stopped, someone would mention the beautiful dog traveling with us. I was used to it, and was still music to my ears, but Mom couldn't understand it entirely. What's with this Dixie thing? I've never heard so much attention given to a dog. You see, I wasn't exaggerating. Side note, back in those days, people didn't travel with their dogs as much as they do now. So at that time, Dixie really did stand out. Uh, my mother, my mother visited for about 10 days or so. Amtrak came right to Dodge City, so couldn't have been easier. And as usual, I enjoyed her company. And I'd like to share with you that in her prime, Pearl Breakstone, 1935 to 2016, was a vivacious, upbeat, and conversational woman. And she helped and enhanced the lives of so many people, especially people who had a hard time advocating for themselves. My mother liked to have fun. She liked to cook. She was creative. She liked to dance. She was rightly proud of her common sense intelligence. And she was a great role model to be a caring person who enjoyed life. My mother actually reinforced me to dance to the beat of my own drummer and to do what I always thought was right for me. She's the one who really taught me to think outside of the limiting box, not just to follow a path that everyone is following because, that's just what you do. She taught me that I should follow my own passions, which of course sometimes backfired on her because, for instance, she also nagged me to get a marketable career, to be a lawyer or an accountant or a teacher or a civil service worker, even if it was just to get a good pension. And through high school and college, I never thought she was wrong. But still, and to no one's surprise, I went my own way. But it touches me to share with you that as the years went on, she often told me that she was proud of the man that I became. I recall as a teenager that she used to say, I not only love you, Steve, because you're my son, but I really like you. That was one of the best, loving, and nicest statements anyone has ever said to me. I mean, it was good to hear as a teenager, and it was good to hear even when she said it as an adult. I think my mother did appreciate the fact that I wound up living in various places in America, and I think she enjoyed each and every visit to wherever I was. And I think she was also thrilled that her daughter, Karen, now known as Toby, did not have my wanderlust and stayed closer to home, although Toby does like to travel. And yeah, I when I think back, I realize that I think my mother was definitely worried about me traveling and living on the road for a few months at a time each year. I mean, literally living on the road by myself for a few months at a time. In fact, I'm sure that she worried much more than I ever considered or was aware of or even respected back then. So I have to appreciate that. Um, but besides being supportive and accepting that I had to do what I had to do, after that trip, she did say that after being with Dixie for a while, she was actually so happy that I was not actually alone and that Dixie would look after me when she couldn't. She became another Dixie fan. Not surprising. I miss my mother. I absolutely miss Pearl Breakstone. I think many people do. I miss the comfort she brought to me by just being herself, her conversation, her sense of humor, and I think her never ending, never wavering love and support, as well as from my father, has a lot to do with the good life that I've had and the good outlook I have on life. So, Pearl Breakstone, she loved Toby and me and many other people dearly. And I think many people loved her deeply. Pearl, she was a heck of a girl. For those just listening and not watching the video, right now I'm showing pictures of my mom. Love you, Mom. March 22nd, 1987, Saturday. I should try to keep perspective. Here I am in a small town by myself, experiencing a decent job with some coworkers I am fond of and some I'm not so fond of, in a not very worldly town with a high divorce rate and lots of poor people. I'm not exaggerating when I say that over 95% of the girls and women I have met between the ages of 19 and 30 are divorced mothers, mostly supporting themselves and their children on minimal salaries. But all these experiences and meetings, and some other things I can't even put my finger on, is why I look at my life in Dodge City, Kansas in a certain way. Yet, I must remember that it is not necessarily the way it is. My opinion and my experiences are only my facts, not necessarily a Dodge City, Kansas fact. These are my thoughts now, but not forever and not the whole story. March 29th, 1987, Sunday. I did the following in the woods and in the van, and now it is time to do it again in Dodge City. My life. I sleep, work, watch TV, read, run, and exercise. I play with Dixie, do occasional shopping and errands, go to occasional movies with Justin, Candy, and sometimes even just by myself. Thank goodness for them, but it's not a very exciting life, is it? And getting more boring all the time. But I have very few annoyances. I'm responsible for only Dixie and me, and we lead the easy life. I do what I want. I have learned, though, that the nothingness of the woods beats the nothingness of town life by far. The woods bring me more to myself. Being there inspires new thoughts and grand dreams and planning. In town, I watch the boob tube. After 4.5 months, our only real friends are the Seaberts. I really don't spend much social time with the folks at work, including Sid, although he is a good guy. It's not easy to make friends in a new town, and I'm learning that. I need more patience. Of course, by the time I'm here long enough to make friends, I'll be leaving. I sure do appreciate the friendship and hospitality of my landlord family. In conversation, playing cards, making ice sculptures in the early spring snow blizzard, or making ice cream with the fresh snow. They are a fun American family. But with so little for me here and having gotten everything out of it that I can, well, without being here for years, I grow anxious and excited about getting back on the road. Since before Mom came and I was planning out a route for us to drive and explore, I have been getting excited just looking at maps. Playboy centerfolds couldn't do a better job of stimulating me. Lines are drawn extending to where my companion and I will be walking and what routes are best and most beautiful. Looking at maps is one of my favorite pastimes and inspires my imagination. But it sure is easy here to imagine life on the road again as I write this lying in my big bed in a heated apartment with all my luxuries. What will I be saying when I'm back on the road and the temperature goes past 95 again and I'm in the middle of nowhere? Of course, I can be no more alone out there than I sometimes feel here. Hmm. Nah, it'll be better. It is what I'm doing, it is what I want, and I no longer belong here. March 30th, 1987, Monday. Here's a thought, something I've been thinking about. I think this country has to teach people to want to learn and to be independent individuals. I've been thinking this in a variety of ways based on my observations of the last few months. For instance, since I've met so many divorced people and single parents, I've been thinking about the difference between wanting a spouse and needing a spouse. I think our society should instill the value that each one of us is a complete, unique, whole individual in our own right. I think the reason so many people get married so young, hence a high divorce rate, is the feeling that an important goal to a fulfilled life is to get married. It seems that many feel that without marriage, you are missing something in your life and you cannot go on to the next step of fulfillment. Here in Dodge, I've had a unique opportunity to observe this phenomenon, but it is far from unique to Dodge. The divorce rate here is high. By listening to television and reading news, this seems to be a national problem, and America does not consider this to be good. I agree. It causes so much negative energy. I believe a solution might be to try to prevent a bad marriage. From my personal experience, I think that no marriage is better than a bad marriage. I find that many bad marriages exist because of the bad reasons people get married. Bad reasons and bad motivations often produce bad marriages. There seems to be an unspoken value that life goes in this direction. You're born, go to school, then graduation, maybe college, maybe not, depending on what part of the country you're from, marriage, kids, career. Or is it a job? But not necessarily in that order. There's a value that you must find a mate. If you do not find a mate, you are incomplete. Therefore, job one is to find that special person. But I have found that that with such strong desires to find a person to marry, that one forgets two things. They forget to look for the real or special Mr. or Ms. Right, and they settle for Mr. or Ms. Good enough. And two, they forget or don't realize that they can be complete without a mate. In other words, most people think they're only half a circle, and until they find the other half, they're incomplete. I believe that we're all complete circles in our own right. We should all strive to become independent individuals without the need of anyone else. There should be no need to look to another person for your happiness and needs. Yes, it's a wonderful thing to have a partner, but instead of two halves, or is it two puzzle pieces, coming together to become one whole, which doesn't always match, each individual is already a complete whole. And when two complete wholes come together or link up, then you have greater glory. Two fulfilled, happy people having a happy marriage and family life, at least theoretically. Or is it idealistically? Side note, reading back on these entries, I still agree with my younger self regarding these thoughts and other similar thoughts I journaled but didn't include in this video. But 2025 Steve also knows that some of those idealistic thoughts of 1987 are not as simple as I stated them. On the other hand, I really wasn't trying to develop a well-rounded argument or had I totally developed the thought. It was just journal entries, not a thesis paper. But I think what was happening is that since leaving New York about a year and a half earlier, I had met so many divorced people who were within 5 years of my 24 years. And this wasn't neutral in my mind. And, well, granted, let's also say that my mind was still, or was also undeveloped in this area anyway. I mean, and think about it. I was living a single young man's adventure lifestyle, traveling around the United States with my dog, and then dreaming also of finding a special girl along the walk who would think I was a good catch. I'll just leave it at that. But regarding my journal thoughts that people should hold off marriage and embrace being single until they were a little older, I'd like to address a note from my friend since college, Bruce Sabian, a licensed mental health counselor. And he was an early reviewer of my journals. And he expressed the following, and I'll read. Steve, you may not have known it at the time, but this paragraph finds you stumbling into the discussion about the differences in men's and women's development. Lots of psychologists who describe the way women develop say that it's a false dichotomy to talk about identity and relationships as being separate things. Rather, they say the drive for connection is so strong in women that it's completely intertwined with identity. Thank you, Bruce. Now, Bruce obviously picked up how easy it was for me to be single and how I simplified the concept and that it was somewhat of a no-brainer to pick being single than in a bad marriage, especially if children were involved. And I respect the research, the hypothesis, and or the wisdom that Bruce mentioned. And actually, I also think that the thought speaks of most human needs, male or female. So people need people. It's as simple as that. On the other hand, I still agree with the basic concept of my thoughts, the importance of first developing oneself as a mostly complete individual, and then to eventually fulfill the innate desire to find a partner, which ultimately is to create that a longer term, healthy and happy and relationship and family and just overall life. Now, perhaps I was ahead of my time. I did some research recently and I popped into AI questions about first marriage and first children. And I found that in the 2020s, the average age for first marriage and first child is closer to 30. In the 1980s, it was closer to 23 to 25 years of age. And thus, the divorce rate since the 1980s has been dropping. Perhaps the current generation learned something from prior generations. But the bottom line is that the reason I actually included these snippets and this side note was because these entries express an important aspect of the lifestyle I had chosen, the future I was creating for myself, and the mindset within that. The poignancy of the experience of walking across America and also working across America was way beyond the backpacking or just living on the road and the beautiful landscapes and the good people and the adventure of a boy and his dog. My observations and thoughts about the USA culture of the 1980s around me and my place within it were as important and poignant aspects of the adventure I had taken on as any of those other aspects of walking and working across America. And so I share with you. And so I continued on my way, physically, emotionally, and cognitively, as best as I could. As always, thanks for letting me share. That's it for now. Peace.